So Aristotle believed that theology is a science, that we need theology because otherwise we cannot explain the ultimate causes of change and existence in the universe. And since the object of science is the ultimate explanation of why things occur the way they occur in the observable world we find ourselves in, then we need to end scientifically with something which looks a lot like God. So what we're going to do now is explain his proof for the existence of God, which Thomas Aquinas takes up almost in its entirety and does very little except explain what this means in Christian terms. So how does it start? Well, we observe around us something that has to be obvious, right? If we don't start with the obvious, we can't prove things because we want to go from the obvious and show how this implies something equally obvious, as we saw in our logical and critical thinking series. So what do we start with? We start with things that change, don't we? We look around us and we see things change. You go to the beach, it's summer, and you start, if you're like me, pretty white, and then you become, if you're like me, not white, but red. There's a change that occurs. And what is change? Well, change is the going from not having some property, like being red, to having that property. Now you're red. You once weren't red, and now you're red and sunburned. Well, then obviously change involves something that you must have the potential to be, but you're not yet. And so whatever changes goes from what is potential to what is actual. But that in itself implies, says Aristotle, that my change from going from white to red could not be something that I caused myself. I didn't just go and become red. Why not? Well, what is something? If something is potential, it doesn't exist yet. It is potential, it's not actual. And what doesn't exist is a sort of nothing. It has no causal power. Something that's merely potential can't make itself come into existence, therefore, because nothing comes from nothing. And therefore, that this potential became actual had to be the result of something that already was actual. Therefore, there are things that change, and it follows that whatever change occurs is changed by something other than itself. So now let's think about this change that caused me from going from white to red. Well, either that cause is something that is changing when it does this, or it is an unchanging thing. It is something that has no change in it whatsoever. Well, let's take the obvious first answer. It's changing. But if it's changing, then according to 2, it needs a cause for its change. Its action in changing me started, and therefore it needed something to cause its change from going from being potentially the thing that changed me to actually the thing that changed me. Now the question is, can this go on forever? Every change presupposing a previous changer that itself is changing and therefore needs something else to explain why it changed. Aristotle says, no, this cannot go on forever. Otherwise, you would have everything as merely potential, waiting for the actual to bring it all into effect. Since each thing is potential until something causes it to do what it does, then we would have nothing existing, because each thing would be potential until it was caused to change, until it was caused to actually cause a change. And so Aristotle says the chain of causes must begin with an ultimate explanation of change, but that ultimate explanation can't be a changing thing. It has to be an ultimate, unchanging first cause. Now, why would it have to be unchanging? Because again, if it was changing, then it would not be the ultimate explanation for change, this whole chain of cause and effect. It itself would need an explanation, and whatever needs an explanation can't be an ultimate explanation for why change is occurring in the first place. So we have to come to something that changes everything else, but is itself unchanging. And thus, it's the source of all action, activity, and power in the universe. That is a first cause, and Aristotle and Aquinas would argue anything that has the quality of being a first cause, we can prove has all the qualities that go into what we would say is God. And so, in the next installment, we will explain how once we have this, we can prove that it's a lot like this.